Wookiees, it's Anna, also known as That Star Wars Girl, and today I'm going to be doing a review of Star Wars The High Republic issue number 1, Trial by Ordeals. Now, if you do not want this comic spoiled, do not watch this video and come back later, because I'm going to be going through page by page and doing a breakdown and review. So again, spoiler warning, if you don't want spoilers, don't watch this video. Okay, good? Moving on. Now, first page, we open up with, the opening crawl, the credits, and then the start of the story. So this was written by Kevin Scott, who has me blocked on Twitter, even though I'd never interacted with him, and I didn't know that I was blocked until somebody sent me a tweet, and I was like, oh, I'm blocked. Who is this? Oh, it's the writer of this comic. And then he did this tweet that was very passive-aggressive of reasons why he blocks certain people, meaning me, and just made accusations that just were blatantly not true and just based on assumptions he made about me. So it's kind of shady, but it is what it is. You can't please everyone, and I know I'm not everyone's cup of tea. So, cool story. Moving on. Now, Ario and Ditto is the artist, and I think he does a fantastic job. And then his inker, Mark Morals, did an as well fantastic job. And actually, even though this art is colored digitally by Annalise Leoni, it is actually drawn traditionally, which personally I prefer. I think it gives that extra edge that makes, just the characters and the environments in it just shine, and there's something about it that I personally prefer when it's drawn traditionally. Just watching images of the artist ink it, it's just so satisfying to me. So that's just my own personal taste. Take it with what you will, but I personally liked the way that the art was drawn and inked in this comic. Now, we have this opening crawl that kind of introduces the world, but at the same time, it says, tries to let you know, Starlight Beacon, the Republic is at peace and the galaxy is ruled, the Jedi Knights are doing their thing, they're noble, and it's about to launch Starlight Beacon. Now, I think that this comic is missing a few pages because you have this opening crawl, which is in tone with Star Wars, but the first page of the comic, since you're, naming all of these places, again, it's visual storytelling, so why aren't there any visuals that go in tune with what you're saying? The first page, I think, should have been where they're showing, okay, here's you have the opening crawl on one page, and you could have even fit it so that way, you had all of the credits on one page, and then on this next page you would have, it's showing Starlight Beacon, and this could just be in, the stars the way they do it in the movies, and you just have a page and you move down the page where it's showing Starlight Beacon. Then obviously these characters, Keeve and Master Skier are on this planet, which you see right here, which this page is laid out fine, but this shouldn't be the first page of your comic. It should show Starlight Beacon because that's what's introduced in this, and then it should show Starlight Beacon in relation to this planet, because it comes up later in this comic that there's Starlight Beacon is pivotal to this plot point, but as far as we know, even though it's in the Outer Rim, okay, the Outer Rim's a big place. Starlight Beacon could be on this side of the Outer Rim, and this planet that Keeve and Master Skier are on could be on this side of the Outer Rim. Space is very big, and so I think Stan Lee said it the best. Every comic is somebody's first comic. So when you're trying to do world building and, leading a new reader into your world, you need to, establish where you are, and especially in Star Wars, because it's a big galaxy, establish where you are in the galaxy. And so, that's why when you do storytelling, it's setting, rising the inciting incident, rising action, climax, falling action, and then resolution. So the setting, you introduce it in this, opening crawl, but I have no relation to where Starlight Beacon is in relation to these characters. It could be that it, again, is on the other side of the galaxy. I don't know. So I think that this story would have benefited for the world building of this, and so that way I know where all the characters are in relation to one another. Just set it up. So there should have just been the opening page, sure, have the opening crawl, but then just completely environments. And then on the next page, which would be the page turner, is the characters and where the characters are, or heck, even this page right here could have had, you know, just made this smaller. And this happens a lot in comics, is where they have like art along and they incorporate, you know, all of the credits and then, you know, the opening dialogue. So that would have been a great way, because this actually is a page turner, and on the next page something big happens. But before I move on to the next panel, I want to talk about some of the vernacular that this writer decides to use. So for those of you that have read comics, you'll probably be familiar, and that's a really big thing, is when you're reading different IPs, or even when you're talking about films or TV shows, there's certain words that are associated with certain franchises. Like if I were to say Borg, you immediately think of Star Trek. If I were to say Force, light side, you think of Star Wars. Now, it says right here, but just as a magnificent renaissance spreads throughout the Republic, so does a frightening new adversary. Now, if you are familiar with comics and you're familiar with other, you know, big franchises within comics, you're probably familiar with Fables. So Fables is a comic that was around for years by Bill Willingham. Disney ripped off his idea and then did their own show, Once Upon a Time, which doesn't even hold a candle to Fables. But one of the overarching, you know, theme, or, you know, plot points and themes and characters, and the main villain of Fables, an antagonist, is referred to as the adversary. And it's one of the main plot points throughout Fables, is that they're trying to figure out who the adversary is. So the second I read this, my mind immediately went to Fables. And again, it's all about the vernacular that you're using. So you're in the Star Wars universe, you would want to use, you know, terminology that, you know, is common and reflects the world that you're writing for. So I would have done something like, so does this frightening new dark presence, you know, like something that you would hear within the Star Wars universe. I wouldn't say, you know, spreads throughout, you know, Renaissance spreads throughout the Republic, so does this frightening new, you know, dark energy or darkness. You could have just said darkness. That actually would have fit perfectly within the Star Wars universe. I wouldn't have thought twice about it, but because they used the word adversary, my mind immediately went to one of the most popular freaking, you know, comic series that's ever existed. But it is what it is. You know, I'm a big fan of Fables, so the second that I saw that, it was a red flag to me. Now, getting into this, let's go to the next page. So this is Master Skier, and then this is Keeve, his Padawan. So as you can see here, this is, you know, a big, you know, 2-panel spread fight scene. And what happens at the end of this fight scene? The Padawan, she's not even a Jedi Knight, beats her master. So what business does this, you know, does Master Keeve have being, or excuse me, Master Skier have being a master if Keeve, a Padawan, beats him on what, the 3rd page of this comic issue? That's a big red flag. There is no reason she should have beat him. No reason at all. And then there's not really a resolution for this. She just helps him up. Now, I know that this character, you know, they talk about how he was in some battle prior to this story. Prior to the story starting, he was in some kind of battle and he lost his arm. Okay, so my question is, if they're in some kind of renaissance, like it says here, why was he fighting? They're in some kind of renaissance. Why on earth would there be battles going on? So that, again, it's like all of these contradictory, like all these things are just contradicting what is happening in this comic. It's a renaissance, but then there was this battle and this one Jedi Master died and this master lost its arm. So it's like fighting itself in the story, and it just doesn't make a lot of sense. And again, this is your first issue. This is like your pilot episode. You're supposed to hook the audience, but then there's these inconsistencies that just continue to build and build and build, and then there's no resolution to them. So it just doesn't make too much sense to me, but I mean, that is what it is. So that's what this is about. And, you know, you're going to go climb, you know, these stalagmites, and, you know, he hid something up on top of there, and so she's got to even though it's like, well, he says that he hid this little you know, this little necklace or something on, or a little pendant on the top of one, and she has to climb up one and get to the top, and it, you know, almost no one has climbed them. So I'm like, she has to get this pendant and climb to the top of one of them, but if her mission is to get this pendant that's at the top of one, is like, is she just gonna have to climb all of them until she finds the right one that has the pendant or something? And we don't really know how, you know, far apart these are, or, you know, just kind of what material they're made of, or I don't know if there's some kind of like force resistance. Is she allowed to use the force? Like, is she allowed to climb up to the top of one, and then if she sees that she climbed up on the top of the wrong one, she's got to get that pendant? Is she allowed to use the force to get it, or does she have to, I don't know, climb it again? They don't answer that. But so then it shows her later, she's climbing up here, and then this was a big one that a lot of people were calling out online, is that this is not how a lightsaber is used. Now, the author did address this, and he said, oh yeah, he did something that we never see people that work for Lucasfilm do, which he owned up to the mistake, and then he said, well, possibly, what about this and this and this? This could be, you know, how this was able to work. But so, I mean, even though, you know, personally what happened between me and this author, where he blocked me and then, you know, made accusations against me that just weren't true, I you know, the reason why I found out that I was blocked and all of that stuff was because somebody posted a screenshot of this panel and him explaining and owning up to the fact that this was a mistake, and, you know, trying to give an explanation of how it could be possible. And I was like, oh wow, that's actually pretty cool. It's the exact opposite of Rian Johnson. And then I clicked the link for the tweet, and that's how I found out it was blocked, and you guys all know the rest and the end of that story. But so, obviously getting something very alarmingly wrong right there. And so then we move on to the next page, which is, obviously she's frustrated. There's these little fairy alien things that are, you know, just not leaving her alone and watching her. But then, out of nowhere, this swarm comes, and for whatever reason, she didn't hear it approaching until it was basically right there. And the consistency and speed of these characters doesn't make sense, because if you go from, you know, 0 to 100 all of a sudden, and then, you know, a few pages later, you know, they're still there and they're really close to her, and now all of a sudden they're not moving as quickly, and then we'll get there when we get there, but it just the consistency on how fast these things are flying doesn't make a lot of sense, considering 0 to 100 in one page. So now we go on to plotline B, which is this Starlight Beacon, which again, they show Starlight Beacon, which is, you know, basically the Justice League Watchtower. And again, we see it, but we have no explanation or of how close it is in relation to where Keeve and Skier are. So it's just, this could be anywhere in the galaxy. Yes, it says it's in the Outer Rim, but again, the Outer Rim is a really big place. So we have the attempt at, you know, like an establishing shot and, you know, establishing where it is in the galaxy, but it's literally just there in space. So we don't know where it is in relation to any planet whatsoever. And so then we have these two Jedi Masters. This is Avar Chris, and then this is Master Maru. And so I think the artist right here in particular, I think this is a really good example of how well the artist is able to show expression and faces. Now, like you see right here, just the acting between Avar and Maru, and you can see, like, obviously very soft feminine features, as, you know, very masculine features on him, even though he's an alien. And then Keeve, so I'm assuming that Keeve is a teenager and that Avar is maybe late 20s, early 30s. And it's very tricky when you're drawing women and giving them expressions, because one line that's a little too heavy-handed or in the wrong place can have a woman go from 20 to 40. And so I think the artist did a very good job of not only, you know, visually doing that expression and showing that acting in the characters, but also a good job in, you know, expressing the different ages in the character. So that is something that me personally, I pay attention to. So I think the artist did a very good job in particular, and I really like the expression in both of these characters' faces. And so they're talking about how Starlight Beacon basically needs a marshal, like somebody to be in charge of Starlight Beacon, because it's still new and it's going to be, you know, the symbol of peace and hope in this outer rim of the galaxy, and it's going to be used to help, you know, new settlers in this area, you know, find different planets and find their way through this, you know, uncharted territory, basically. And then Master Yoda and then this other master, Vitor, show up, and they basically tell her that we want you to be the Grand Marshal, or the Marshal of Starlight Beacon. So she got a promotion. And then we go back to Keeve, and so again, these, you know, bug things, the Radity, again, they went from 0 to 100 in one page, but now for whatever reason, she's able to keep up with them, and they're on a trajectory to go through the alien fairies, to go, the Simpi, which again, it's like, why would you name them that? So they're about to go through their trajectory is to go through the Simpi little city. So she gets this idea that she's going to lead them in a different direction. And so she gets in her ship, and then she starts talking to Starlight Beacon with, excuse me, with Master Maru. And then they figure out that Starlight Beacon is emitting some kind of signal that these alien, I don't know, space flying living creatures, it's messing up their directions. So the signal is making them go on a different trajectory than they always used to do. So they need, and she, you know, does this whole thing where she connects with the Force and basically goes into the Matrix, and she's like, all right, we gotta fix it, let's just emit a different signal, and then they'll go on their merry way, or let's move our signal onto a different frequency. And then remember a few pages earlier where she was falling from the stalagmites and she used her lightsaber to catch herself, which is not how a lightsaber works. Well, now, even though she's in, I think, the higher up atmosphere, she leaves her ship and then jumps out of it, and she's just fine. She's just absolutely fine on the next page, which it's like, what happened? You know, how did you go? Like, there should have been some kind of explanation, but I guess they decided to skip over that part to not have to answer that question. So now it shows her helping build or rebuild these cities, or these, it doesn't really, the needles or whatever it is exactly that these things are, because now obviously these look different than the needles that we had in the last page, and it doesn't really resemble the little alien city that we had over here when he's, you know, yelling, hey, look at, like, there's my home, there's my home. So as you can see on here, it's like they're rocks, or they look like little mountains with like the little huts built into them. I don't know if you can see it, it is very small. And then when we have her back over here, if she's really rebuilding their city, then they didn't accomplish their mission, because the little, you know, like transcellular bugs flew right through them. So, and I don't know why these rocks would be hollow. It just looked like they had little huts built onto the mountains. So I don't know why that they would have hollow rocks, but I don't really understand, like, the architecture behind this. It doesn't make too much sense to me. I would understand if they're, you know, rebuilding the huts into it, but the way that they made it look in a previous panel was that these were built into the rocks, kind of like birds' nests are, or like swallows' nests and stuff. So I don't understand this, and they don't really explain it, so I guess it's just one of those things we're never going to get an answer to. And I mean, it's not the biggest thing in the world, but it just didn't make sense to me personally, because this is a key, you know, panel that they chose to draw for this. And I mean, that I think is something that, if it was a castle and they're building out of stones, that's one thing. But, you know, a few panels ago, it just looks like they're like swallows' nests that are perched onto like these little monoliths. But apparently they're just hollow, and that's what they live in, which it didn't look like before. But it is what it is, and they kind of make it look like windows coming out. So I don't know why you would build your structures like that. It is what it is. That's the way they drew it. And so then, you know, thinks that she's like, oh shit, I didn't get that pendant thing, so I probably fucked up. And then Skier is just like, all right, you lost ship. All right, let's go. And then in a previous panel when we had, with Avar and the other Jedis, is they were talking about how Skier, she can't hear his song anymore and he's acting weird. It doesn't have to do with his arm. It has to do with something else. So they are implying that something else happened and he's been acting weird. And it's just like, well, maybe it's not him, considering he's a Jedi Master that lost to his apprentice on the 3rd page of this comic book. And so then we get back. They're back on Starlight Beacon, which again, it's like, apparently this thing is close enough to the planet that they were on that these bugs could hear their radio signal, but there's no kind of establishing shot to show us how close Starlight Beacon was in relation to the planet, which again, I think that's important in a Star Wars galaxy where it's so vast and everything is so spread out that you do need those establishing shots, so that way you can let the audience know where you are in the universe. I think that's just so vitally important, and I think that's a given in comics, but that's just me. So then, she's doubting herself. They come up and she starts fangirling over Avar. And it's one of those things where I'm like, you're a Padawan, so you've been living with the Jedi, almost your entire life, since basically you were either a baby or a toddler, because that's usually when they go and they get Padawans. So wouldn't you have run into this woman at some time? Also, why would you be fangirling over basically your coworker? That just doesn't make sense to me. It's one thing if you're meeting like a king or a queen or an empress or somebody like that you've never seen before, but you're really telling me that you've been raised in the Jedi Order and she's one of the main, Jedi, she's one of the masters, that you never encountered her ever? And it's like, I never saw Anakin like fanboying over, oh, I got to meet Master Yoda. When he met Qui-Gon, he was like, I know you're a Jedi, but he did it in that little kid way. And he's like, you could never kill a Jedi, but he didn't, when he was brought before the Jedi Council, he's not, going all fanboying because he's like, oh my God, you guys are all the Jedi Masters. You all are so cool. I've heard stories about you. That's just not how it works. So this didn't really make sense, but it reminded me a lot of how when Rey met Han Solo, she's like, this is the Millennium Falcon, Han Solo, oh, the smuggler, because, Finn's like, oh, the war hero, and she's like, no, the smuggler, and it's like, you really want me to believe that Han Solo, one of, the leaders of the Rebel Alliance, and one of the guys that was responsible for helping Luke blow up the Death Star, you don't remember him for that, you remember him for being a smuggler. Doesn't make much sense, but I mean, that's Disney Star Wars. And so she's, babbling on about how she thinks that she didn't finish her mission, even though earlier on in this comic, one of the things that Skier was trying to teach her is that Jedis act. They don't, just listen to, these codes. Jedi act on things, and which is exactly what she did. So she gets knighted. This is extremely dangerous, but I mean, it is what it is. I guess it's a test of courage. But so this is another one of those instances where I feel like the comic is missing a page. Now, we have this, it has the like, she obviously right here doesn't realize that she's about to be knighted. And then we have this other, these next couple of pages where she's having that inner little dialogue, which is all of these little green boxes, and she's talking about how she realized that that was the test that Skier had set up. Now, here's a big plot hole. Skier had no reason, unless he has the gift of foresight, which is not shown in this issue, but unless he has the gift of foresight, he had no way of knowing that, Starlight Beacon's radio waves messed with the Radides, trajectory and where they were going and was going to cause all of these issues. He had this whole other mission, set up. But so she's saying, here that he knew all along. So again, if he has the gift of foresight, that's something that should be addressed in this comic to let us know. But again, I think it's suffering from missing a page, and so there should have been a page, or at least a panel, of her and him having a conversation, because he's her master, right? So if he's her master, he should be teaching her things. And so she learned a lesson in this in this issue, which was that, you have to act and you have to figure things out. But Skier is her master, and he didn't really have anything to do with that. So there should have been a page, in my opinion, it should have been an entire page where he's asking her, do you know what you did wrong? And then do you know what you did right, and what did you learn from this? And him and her and him having a back and forth, so that way you could have a resolution to that, so that way she understands and truly knows. That's something that I think is a given when you are trying to convey a story that where there's the teacher and then the apprentice. Because even with Obi-Wan, when Luke is doing something and then Luke achieves his thing, or he fails, and then Obi-Wan has the little wise thing to say where it's like, you must, let go, Luke, use the Force. Just something simple like that. So I think if there was another page here just for that, and then you turn the page and it's this ceremony where apparently everyone has come to like the grand opening in a way of Starlight Beacon. So you have, this is supposed to be the Empress, and then this is one of her pet lions. And you have Skier, who is very, very upset. And, Var giving the little speech, and that, I guess, is being projected to everyone. And, all the Jedi are doing this, which, it's this special ceremony. It's Starlight Beacon, which is going to be this important thing for all of them. And so I get why everyone is there. The grand opening of, new Jedi headquarters. But then we have how they implied that, there's something off about Skier because Var can't hear his song anymore. He's getting beaten by his Padawan in the first freaking page of this comic book, and then he's over here screaming no. So, if one of the things about when you have your opening pilot to something new, your very first issue, you have to connect with the audience. You have to make us care about these characters. Now, there was an attempt with Keeve, with, showing that she's struggling, showing that she can problem solve and stuff like that, and that she's still, a naive kid, basically, with her fangirling. So there was that setup. It might have not been handled in the best way, but it was there. If she was fangirling and it was all her inner monologue, that's a different story, because that, again, that shows her what kind of character she is. But the fact that it was, actually verbalized and the other characters were able to hear it, it's like, would you really be doing that? And why? It doesn't really make sense that was her first time meeting one of the leaders of the Jedi. And so with this whole thing with Skier, everything that we know about him was said by other characters. You don't really get to see it from him. It's very, just face value. There's no depth to it aside from the things with the other characters. So if there would have been that page right in between this page and this page showing the dynamic between her and him, and her resolving and verbalizing what the mission was, and him confirming it, and passing on some words of wisdom, and maybe even at the end of that, even she acknowledges that there's something off with her master, it would have made this much more impactful. But that page was missing, so this kind of falls flat. Now, it says to be continued. I watched the High Republic live stream that was on the Star Wars YouTube channel, and so one of the things that the author of this comic actually said was they were talking about one of the villains in the High Republic, and I did a video on it. It's like the plant creature that's like a mix of the Borg and Swamp Thing. And so he implied that there is a Jedi that is connected to them in some way. So maybe that's what it is. Maybe he is connected to the dark side root plant creature, or maybe Yavara is, because she's the bestest ever. But I don't know. I feel like because the way Disney does things is they like to subvert expectations. So it could be that he's connected to the dark side plant things, or it could be that he knows that there's another Jedi, or one of the Jedis that's his friend that he's close to or that he respects, as a colleague, is connected to it, so he knows what the plot is, or he knows some kind of conspiracy and he can't confide it in everyone, which is why he's upset. I don't know, but again, this falls flat because we aren't connected to this character because that page is missing right here, which would have been a great character moment for him, because we already know the backstory in her. We already kind of get the thing with Avar. We don't everything about him is implied by other characters, which was very brief in one page. So that would have been something that I think just was detrimental to, you know, the ending page turner at this point, because it's like, well, why should we care about him aside from the fact that he's her master, but he didn't really teach her anything. She came to the conclusion on her own, so she really doesn't need him. She beat him in the 3rd page. She came to her own conclusion on her own. Based on this comic, he's not the best master. So I think that that really hindered the plot and, you know, really hindered the impact of this final page. But anyways, everyone, that is my breakdown for the High Republic issue 1. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. If you liked it, great. If you didn't like it, great. But honestly, let me know what you did like about it and what you didn't like. If there was like a certain art panel that you said, wow, the acting and emotion in it is really great, or, you know, maybe it's not the best, or, you know, what you thought about the story. If there's anything that I missed that you guys want me to touch on, let me know in the comment section below as well. I don't know if I'm going to continue going through the series. This first, you know, issue did not really draw me in. I did do a dramatic reading of it, which made me, yeah, I enjoyed doing that. I enjoyed doing the dramatic reading where I got to, you know, do different voices for different characters. Again, I really like the art. I think the artist did a really good job. I was actually pleasantly surprised by how good the art was in this comic, because I feel like a lot of times growing up, I would be drawn in by the cover, and then you open up the comic and the art is just not even close to the level of quality as the cover. And so this, I actually like the interior art better than the cover of this comic. So that's just my own personal taste when it comes to art, but I think the artist did a fantastic job at showing emotions and like the different ages and range, and did a really good job handling the different alien species. So that's what I liked about this comic. But everyone, let me know what you think in the comments below. If you liked this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, that's okay too. Thank you so much for watching this far through. And if you haven't already, take a minute to subscribe to my channel, ring the bell for notifications. And until next time, everyone, have a great rest of your day, morning, evening, afternoon, wherever you are in the world. And may the Force be with you, because we are really, really, really going to need it. Bye, everyone. What's up, everyone? It's Anna, also known as That Star Wars Girl, and I have an Etsy store, so if you've ever wanted to own a print of my artwork, this is the place to go. As you can see, I have a lot of recognizable characters, from horror films to heroes to Star Wars characters. Some of the notable characters I have on here are Darth Vader, which I did a couple live streams painting, so you can own a print of this painting. I also have Luke Skywalker, the Binary Sunset version, one of my favorite scenes in the original New Hope movie. I have Darth Maul, which Ray Parks himself actually complimented me on Instagram. And then last but certainly not least, Ahsoka Tano. So if you want to own any of these prints, go right on over to my Etsy store. Again, that's The Art of Anna, That Star Wars Girl, or TSWG for short. Thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.